My name is Audrey Jean Calloway, and I was 44 years old. The Christmas morning I sat alone in a Hampton Inn off the highway, reading 43 messages in a family group chat I was never supposed to see. It was a Tuesday in December, the kind of cold that comes in off a flat Midwestern plane and doesn't argue with you. My room smelled like carpet cleaner and the ghost of someone else's coffee, and the TV was on low with the volume muted, because I'd been in the habit, for years, of filling quiet rooms with the shape of sound rather than the sound itself. My phone had buzzed on the nightstand at 9:17. A notification from a thread I didn't recognize. A group chat called Family Christmas. My sister Renee had added me by accident. I know because 20 seconds later she sent me a private text. Oops. Wrong chat. Ignore that LOL. I was already reading 43 messages, 3 years of wrong dates and small gatherings, and we thought we told you packed into a single thread. My mother's message was in there, clear as anything, clear as a title on a deed. Just tell her the wrong date like last year. My brother Kevin replied with a laughing emoji. My father didn't reply at all, which was worse. I put the phone face down on the polyester bedspread and sat very still for a moment. Outside, the highway hummed. Someone 2 rooms down was watching something with a laugh track. Then I turned the phone back over, opened the county recorder's website, typed in the address of my grandmother Vera's house on Elm Street, and waited while the page loaded. What I found in that database changed everything that happened next. Not because I was looking for a weapon, because I finally stopped looking away. Welcome back to Sweet Payback Stories. If you've ever been pushed aside while everyone else got a seat at the table, this story is for you. Subscribe and stay until the end, because one accidental text message exposed a secret that changed an entire family forever. Vera Elaine Calloway was born in 1938 in a small town in central Ohio, the daughter of a hardware store owner who believed that property was the only thing a family could hold onto when everything else went sideways. She took that lesson seriously. She and my grandfather Leonard bought the house on Elm Street in 1964, a 2-story clapboard with a covered porch that wrapped around the south side, white trim, a mailbox shaped like a barn that Leonard built himself from scrapwood, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where the linoleum had been replaced twice, and the window above the sink looked out onto a backyard maple that dropped its leaves every October like clockwork. Leonard died in 1991. Vera stayed in that house alone for the next 32 years. She said she didn't need a smaller place. She said the house wasn't too big for one person, it was exactly the right size for the people she expected to come back to it. I was one of those people. I'm the middle child in a family of 3. My older brother Kevin is 49, drives a truck for a regional distributor, and has the particular confidence of a man who has never once doubted that the world was arranged in his favor. My younger sister Renee is 39, works at a dental office in Columbus, and has her mother's talent for staying close to whoever has the most social power in any given room. I'm a structural engineer. I travel for work about 40% of the time, staying in hotels like that Hampton Inn, eating dinner at my laptop, rebuilding bridges for municipalities that have been putting it off too long. Growing up, I was the one who turned in homework on time, while Kevin played varsity baseball and Renee did dance recitals. Mom drove them. Dad cheered. I rode my bike to the library. That was fine. I told myself busy people get overlooked, and I built a quiet life around the assumption that being useful was the same as being included. I sent the Christmas gifts on time, every year. I booked the restaurant for Mom's birthday 3 years running. When Kevin needed his car moved for knee surgery, I drove 4 hours on a Thursday to do it. I never asked for thanks. I just assumed the effort would be noticed eventually. It wasn't. Vera noticed. She was the one person in the family who called me on a Tuesday just to ask how the project was going, who remembered which bridge I was working on and followed up the following month to ask if the inspection passed, who kept a stack of crossword puzzles by the back door and would sit with me at the kitchen table when I visited and work through them without needing to fill the silence with anything. I'd spent the summer after my freshman year of college in that house. I couldn't afford the dorm deposit, and I was too proud to ask my parents. Vera let me sleep in the upstairs bedroom with the sloped ceiling and the window that looked out at the maple. She made coffee every morning at 6 and put it on the table before I came down, and she never once made me feel like I was an imposition. That house was the only place I never had to explain why I was there. She gave me a key when she turned 75. Thanksgiving, in front of the whole family, she pressed it into my palm at the end of dinner while the men men were watching football and Renee was helping Mom with the dishes. A brass key, heavier than you'd expect, cut in a style they didn't make anymore. She pressed it into my palm, and she said it clearly enough for anyone paying attention to hear. "This is your home whenever you need one, Audrey." Mom looked up from the sink. Kevin didn't look up at all. Renee's eyes flicked to the key and back to the dish she was drying. No one said anything. I thanked Vera and slipped the key onto my ring and didn't think too deeply about why she said it the way she did, plainly, publicly, with a steadiness that wasn't sentiment. It felt like an invitation. It would be 8 years before I understood it was also a document. Vera died 3 years ago, in October, in that house, in her own bed, the way she had always said she wanted to. She was 84. Her last winter, Kevin had driven up to fix a gutter. Renee had visited twice. I had driven up every 6 weeks, rotating my project schedule around her appointments, and I had been there the weekend she died, sitting at the kitchen table doing a crossword with her name on one side and mine on the other. She died on a Sunday. By Wednesday, the family had already begun rearranging things. Nobody asked me about the estate. Nobody mentioned a will or an attorney or a plan. Mom said it was being handled. Kevin said there wasn't much to handle. Renee said it was too soon to talk about the details. I assumed they knew what they were doing. That was the first mistake. The second was staying quiet about the Christmas invitations. The first wrong date was the year Vera died. Mom called to say they were doing a small thing on the 28th. I showed up on the 28th with a casserole dish of scalloped potatoes, and the lights were off and the door was locked. Mom picked up on the 5th ring. "Oh, honey, we did it on the 25th this year. A last-minute thing." I stood on the porch with the potatoes cooling in my hands and I said, "That's okay, my fault for not checking." It was not my fault. The second wrong date was the following year. Mom said the 27th. I drove 4 hours. The house was empty again. The third year was the year of the group chat. I was in Columbus, 2 weeks into a hotel stay for a bridge retrofit project, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A group thread I'd never been added to. 43 messages. My sister's accidental ad. Her private text. "Oops. Wrong chat. Ignore that LOL." I did not ignore it. I read every word. 3 years of deliberate wrong dates, assembled in writing, handed to me by accident on a Tuesday in December. And 10 minutes later, I opened the county recorder's website. The Millfield County Recorder's website looked like it hadn't been updated since 2011. White background, blue links, a search bar that required the exact property address. I typed in 417 Elm Street and waited while the page loaded in that slow, government portal way that makes you think nothing important could possibly live there. It did. The document list for 417 Elm Street went back to 1964. The original purchase deed, a refinance in 1987, a satisfaction of mortgage in 2002, and then one more entry near the bottom, filed 8 years ago, 3 years before Vera died, a quitclaim deed. I clicked it. The scan loaded slowly, grainy, slightly tilted on the page, the way county scans always are. I had to zoom in to read the text clearly. At the top, quitclaim deed, grantor, Vera Elaine Calloway, grantees, plural, Diane Patricia Calloway, that was my mother, and Audrey Jean Calloway. Tenants in common. I read it 3 times. Not a keepsake, not a sentiment, a recorded legal instrument, filed with the county, indexed, searchable, stamped and numbered, that said I co-owned half of that house. Not symbolically, not emotionally, on paper, in the county's own database, 8 years ago, with a notary seal and a filing number. I sat back in the cheap hotel chair and let it roll a few inches across the carpet. Vera hadn't just given me a key to a house. She had given me the house, half of it, anyway, and she had done it through the proper legal channel, quietly, without telling anyone who would have argued her out of it, because she understood something that I was just now beginning to understand. A key can be taken back. A recorded deed cannot be wished away. I pulled up the rest of the documents. There was no subsequent transfer, no deed from me to anyone else, no court order, no quitclaim releasing my interest. My name was still on that property, unchanged, the same way it had been since the day Vera walked into a notary's office and put it there. Then I opened the group chat screenshots I'd been taking for the past hour and started cross-referencing. Message 31, Kevin, closing's the 26th, just keep her away till then. Message 33, Mom, Karen says the buyer wants a walkthrough Christmas afternoon. Make sure the house is staged by noon. Karen, a buyer, a closing on December 26th, a staged house. I opened a new browser tab and searched Karen Hendricks Realtor Millfield, Ohio. She came up in 4 seconds. A small brokerage on the east side of town. I clicked through to her current listings. Third one down. 417 Elm Street, Millfield. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, wraparound porch. Asking $268,000. Contact agent for details. They had listed Vera's house, listed it, staged it, lined up a buyer, and scheduled a closing, all while making sure I wouldn't find out until it was done. The wrong dates weren't carelessness. They were project management. I was a variable they needed to control. And the variable they hadn't accounted for was a recorded deed at the county office that had been sitting there for 8 years. You cannot easily sell a property when someone else's name is on the title. That is not a technicality. That is property law. Any title company running a standard search would find my name. Any buyer's lender would flag the discrepancy. The closing would halt until every party with a recorded interest had signed off. I had never signed off. No one had asked me to. 2 messages later in the group chat, I found the reason. Kevin, message 38. The loan notice came. Bank wants full payment by February or they file. Mom's on the hook since she co-signed. Mom, message 39. That's why we need the sale to clear before the new year. Get the money in before they escalate. Kevin's auto body shop had been struggling. I'd heard it mentioned in the family, always in passing, always smoothed over. But the shape of it was clearer now. Kevin had taken out a business loan, and Mom had co-signed it, and the loan was going bad, and the fastest way to cover the debt was to sell the paid-off house Vera had left behind. The only problem was my name on the deed, which they didn't know I knew about, which meant their plan only worked if I stayed exactly where they'd kept me for 3 years, far away, trusting the wrong dates, grateful for leftovers. I held the brass key in my hand under the lamplight. The square bow dug into my palm the way it always did when I squeezed it. I'd been carrying this key for 11 years, never took it off my ring, not even after Vera died, not even when I stopped going to the house, because it hurt too much, and because nobody invited me anyway. I set the key on the desk next to the laptop. Vera had planned this 8 years ahead. She had known the shape of this family, had known it for decades, probably, and she had made the one move that couldn't be undone by a group chat, or a wrong date, or a buyer's walkthrough on Christmas afternoon. She had put my name in writing, with the county's stamp on it, where the truth lives. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the particular ache of understanding something too late, and also not too late. Vera couldn't call back, but she'd already said what she needed to say in the only language the county recorder's office accepts. I opened a blank note on my phone and wrote one line. Do not react. Do not confront. Let the system work. Then I put the phone down and went to bed. I didn't sleep for a long time, but I went to bed. Mom called on a Wednesday morning, 4 days after the group chat. I let it ring twice before I answered, because I needed 2 rings to flatten my voice into something that sounded like a woman who had not spent the last 4 days reading county records and consulting a real estate attorney named Patricia Voss, whom I'd found through the Ohio State Bar's referral line and spoken to for 45 minutes on a Thursday afternoon. Hi, sweetheart. Mom's voice was warm the way it always was when she needed something to go smoothly. So Christmas, we're keeping it small this year. Just the 4 of us at the house. You know how it gets. But if you're back from your project by the 28th, you could swing by for leftovers. The 28th, delivered on schedule, exactly as the chat prescribed. Message 14, Mom, the 28th, say we're doing a small thing on the 28th. She was reading from her own script. That sounds fine, Mom, I said. I'll check my schedule. Perfect. Don't bring anything fancy. Just yourself. She laughed. I didn't. I said goodbye and hung up and sat very still. The worst part wasn't the lie. I'd been lied to before, about schedules, about why the invitation hadn't come, about whether they'd received the gift I sent. The worst part was how easy it was for her. The rhythm, the warmth, the little laugh, all of it practiced, all of it aimed at keeping me exactly where I'd been for 3 years. Far away, uninformed, and grateful for the crumbs. She didn't even pause on the date. I called Patricia Voss that afternoon and told her what I knew. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said 4 things, cleanly, in order. First, the deed was valid and enforceable. My name as tenant in common meant I held an undivided co-ownership interest in the property. Second, no title company would issue a clear title policy on a sale that didn't include my signature on the conveyance documents. The buyer's lender would require clear title before funding. Third, if my family tried to close close the sale without resolving my interest. The title search would flag my name and the closing would stall, possibly permanently. Fourth, if they wanted to force a sale over my objection, they would have to file a partition action in civil court, a matter of public record, months of process, legal fees on both sides. Your signature isn't optional, Patricia said. It's structural. I wrote that line down on my hotel notepad and underlined it twice. Renee called that Friday. She didn't mean to tell me anything. She just talked the way she always did when she was nervous, circling the real topic with small talk, approaching it sideways. Kevin's been really stressed, she said after 15 minutes of salon news and boyfriend updates. The shop is bad. Like, letters from the bank bad. Mom co-signed his original loan, so if he defaults. She trailed off. When did it get that serious? I asked. She hesitated. It's been building a while. You know how it is. He doesn't like to talk about it. I didn't push. I didn't need to. The picture was complete now. Kevin's business was failing. Mom's credit was exposed through the co-signature. Selling Vera's paid-off house was the cleanest solution. Fast, significant, no mortgage to clear. Enough to cover the loan and protect Mom before the bank escalated in February. And I was the one piece of the puzzle they'd decided to root around rather than include. We just didn't think you'd care about the old place, Renee said near the end of the call, almost to herself. I thanked her and said goodnight and wrote that sentence down too. December 19, Mom sent an email. No subject line, just an attachment labeled estate_cleanup_docs.pdf and a one-line message. Audrey, can you sign these and send back before the 24th? Just routine estate paperwork from Vera's trust. Thanks, Mom. I opened the PDF. The first page was not routine estate paperwork. It was a deed of sale, a conveyance document transferring all interest in 417 Elm Street, Millfield, Ohio from Diane Patricia Calloway and Audrey Jean Calloway to a buyer named Robert Foss for a purchase price of $268,000. My signature line was on page 4, flagged with a yellow adhesive tab. The word sign was written on the tab in Renee's handwriting. I recognized the loopy lowercase s. Page 5 was a disbursement schedule. The sale proceeds, after closing costs, were routed to a single bank account. Mom's, not split, not shared, 100% to Diane Patricia Calloway. My name was on the signature line. My name was not in the payment column. They wanted me to sign away my ownership interest in the only place that ever felt like mine for free, in a document called Estate Cleanup, sent 4 days before Christmas like a greeting card. I saved the file. I forwarded it to Patricia Voss, and I did not reply to Mom's email. I left it sitting in my inbox, read but unanswered, the way they'd left me standing on that porch 3 years in a row with my dish cooling in my hands. That night I held the brass key in the lamplight and thought about Vera sitting at a notary's table, signing her name on a deed, paying the filing fee, driving to the recorder's office to drop off the original. 40 minutes. That was all it had taken her to do the one thing that couldn't be undone. She'd never mentioned it to me again, never brought it up, never hinted, never said by the way. She'd just put it in the system where the county could hold it, and she had trusted that I would find it when the time came. She trusted me to read the document. They trusted me not to. I called Patricia Voss on December 20th and told her I was ready. She already had the deed scan. She already had the operating timeline. She had, in fact, drafted 2 documents over the preceding week that she'd been holding until I gave her the word. The first was a formal letter to Karen Hendricks at Hendricks Realty, identifying me as a co-owner of record on 417 Elm Street, referencing the recorded deed by filing number, and requesting confirmation of how my ownership interest was being addressed in the pending sale process. The second was a cease and desist addressed to my mother, Kevin, and Renee Calloway, informing them that any attempt to convey property at 417 Elm Street without my written consent constituted a violation of my recorded property rights and would be treated accordingly. I told her to send the letter to Karen first, not the cease and desist. Not yet. I wanted to give the system a chance to do what the system does before I added heat. Karen Hendricks called me 4 hours later. Her voice was the voice of a professional recalibrating a deal in real time, controlled, careful, efficient. Miss Calloway, thank you for reaching out. I've reviewed the deed you referenced, and I've pulled the title report. I need to verify a few things things with the title company. Can I call you back? She called back the next morning. The title search confirmed your name on the deed, she said. The closing cannot proceed as currently structured without your participation. I'll need to inform the sellers and the buyer's agent that there is an unresolved co-ownership issue. That's fine, I said. I'd prefer all communication regarding the property go through my attorney. I gave her Patricia's contact information. She thanked me professionally and hung up. The fuse was lit. I didn't need to touch it again. On December 22nd, Kevin called me directly. His number flashed on my screen 4 times before I answered. He'd never been good at subtlety. Audrey. His voice was tight, the specific tight of a man who has discovered a problem he can't charm his way past. We need to talk about Grandma's house. Okay, I said. Look, I don't know where you got the idea that you have some kind of claim on it, but the estate was settled. Mom handled everything. If there's some confusion about the paperwork, it's not confusion, I said. My name is on the deed. It's been on the deed for 8 years. Karen Hendricks has a copy, the title company has a copy, and my attorney has a copy. A pause. You talked to Karen. His voice changed registers. Something shifted underneath it. She called me, I said. The title search found the deed. Another pause, longer. This is going to mess up the timeline, he said. Not I didn't know. Not we should have told you. The timeline. Kevin, I said. Vera put my name on that property. She did it at a notary's office with a filing number. She did it because she wanted to. I didn't ask for it. I didn't arrange it, and I found out about it the same time you did, just now, from the county recorder's website. Mom said the will covered everything. This wasn't in the will, I said. It was a deed filed 8 years ago. A will transfers assets when someone dies. A deed transfers title while they are alive. They are different documents and they work differently. If you had asked an attorney before you listed the house, they would have told you that. Silence. I let it sit. Finally, what do you want, Audrey? And there it was. The question that always arrives after the maneuvering fails. The question that means, we have been managing you and the managing has stopped working, so now we would like to negotiate. I want to be included in the conversation, I said. The same conversation you've been having without me for 3 years. My attorney will be in touch. I hung up. That afternoon, Mom left a voicemail. Her voice was high and cracked and moving fast, the way it moved when she needed to get ahead of something. Audrey, I don't know what you think you know, but you need to call me right now. This is a family matter, and you are blowing it completely out of proportion. Blowing it out of proportion. The woman who organized 3 consecutive wrong Christmas dates and emailed me a deed of sale disguised as estate paperwork was telling me I was overreacting. I played the voicemail twice, saved the transcript, and added it to the folder on my desktop labeled 417 Sycamore. I mean Elm. 417 Elm. I opened the county recorder page one more time and looked at my name in the grantee field. Audrey Jean Calloway. Tenants in common. Vera had written my name there 8 years ago with a notary stamp and a filing number. The county recorder didn't care that I hadn't been invited to Christmas. The county recorder didn't care that I was the one who got the wrong date for 3 years in a row. The county recorder only knew what was filed. What was filed said I was an owner. If you are watching this and you have a family member who calls you only when something needs signing, subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the signing doesn't happen. Because the closing was in 4 days, and I still hadn't typed a single word into that group chat. I drove back to Columbus on December 23rd. My project lead said I could head home for the holiday, and I chose my apartment instead of Millfield because there was nothing in Millfield I needed to be physically present for. Everything that needed to happen was already in motion. I unpacked, did laundry, watered the plant on the kitchen counter that was improbably still alive, and sat down at my own desk. The manila folder was in my bag. I took it out and set it next to the brass key, which I placed on the desk like a paperweight. 2 things from Vera, one sentimental, one legal, sitting side by side under my desk lamp. I opened the group chat on my phone one more time. The conversation had continued in the days since the accidental ad. More logistics, more coordination, Kevin confirming the walkthrough time, Mom reminding everyone that the house needed to be empty by noon on the 26th, Renee asking about the pie, and then, 2 nights before Christmas, Renee posted a photo of the house, porch lights on, a wreath that wasn't Vera's on the door, the front room visible through the window with furniture I didn't recognize. Staged. They had staged Vera's house. They had replaced her things with catalog furniture and a stranger's wreath before they'd even closed the sale. Mom typed, Tomorrow's going to be perfect. Don't forget, nobody mentions Audrey. She thinks it's the 28th. Kevin sent a Santa emoji. Nobody mentions Audrey. 3 words that summarized a decade of holiday math. Every wrong date. Every locked door. Every "oh, we thought we told you." It wasn't casual. It was policy. I put the phone face down on the couch cushion. Outside, the apartment above mine was playing Christmas music, the bass moving through the ceiling in a slow, muffled pulse. I sat in the quiet of my own kitchen and thought about what the next morning looked like from their side. Kevin relieved. Mom orchestrating the table. Renee setting plates for 4 instead of 5, not counting the absence because she'd stopped counting it years ago. They'd feel good about the closing and good about the holiday and good about the fact that the one person who could have complicated things believed she'd been invited for the 28th. And at some point in the morning, when they were all together and comfortable and certain, my message would land in the chat. I'd written it 3 weeks earlier and kept it in a draft, reading it every few days to make sure it still said exactly what I wanted it to say, which was almost nothing. I had spent 3 years watching my family communicate through performance and omission, and I had learned something from all of it. The loudest version wins in that family, which meant the quietest version wins against it. My message was 6 words. Merry Christmas. Your realtor will explain. No accusation, no emotion, no explanation of what I knew or how I knew it. Just a sentence that pointed them toward the one person who had the authority and the obligation to tell them the truth. Karen Hendricks, who had already left a voicemail for Mom on December 23rd that Mom had decided to deal with after Christmas. Mom hadn't told anyone about that voicemail. She'd buried it the way she'd buried every complication I'd ever represented. Quietly, confidently, on her own schedule. She figured she'd call Karen on the 26th, smooth it over, explain that I was difficult and wouldn't be a problem. She did not call me. She did not mention Karen's message to Kevin, or Renee, or Dad. She just waited. That was the mistake that made Christmas morning what it was. At 9:48 on December 25th, I tapped the draft and hit send. Merry Christmas. Your realtor will explain. I set the phone on the desk, screen up, and watched. The typing indicator appeared under Renee's name. Vanished. Appeared under Mom's name. Vanished. Kevin's appeared for a full 12 seconds. Vanished. Nobody sent a word. The chat that had been full of Santa emojis and pie updates 3 minutes ago went dead quiet. I picked up my coffee, still warm. I took a sip and waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes. The calls started. Kevin first, then Renee, 3 times in 90 seconds. Then Mom again, then Kevin again. I opened a notes app and started a tally. Not because I was performing anything, because I'm an engineer and that's what I do with data. I track it. 67 calls in the first hour. I let them ring. Mom's first voicemail. Audrey, what does that mean? What realtor? Call me right now. Her voice high and fast, already building toward the register she used when the script had failed and there was no backup plan. Kevin's first voicemail. You had no right to go behind our backs. Behind their backs. As though the group chat I was never supposed to see was the front. Renee sent a text. Audrey, what's going on? Please just call me. What does your realtor will explain mean? I screenshot every voicemail transcript, saved every text, added them to the folder. Here is what I learned later, pieced together from what Karen told Patricia and what Renee eventually told me herself. Karen had left Mom a voicemail on December 23rd, a professional courtesy. The title search had flagged a co-owner who had not been consulted or included in the sale process. Karen recommended pausing the closing until the issue was resolved. Mom didn't tell anyone. She assumed she could handle it after Christmas. She figured she'd call Karen on the 26th and smooth it over, tell her I was estranged and wouldn't be a problem. Then my message landed in the chat at 9:48 on Christmas morning, and Karen's buried voicemail stopped being a problem she could postpone. Kevin called Karen at 10:15. Karen, to her credit, was measured. She told him what she'd already told Mom. 2 co-owners of record, only one had authorized the sale. The closing could not proceed until the other co-owner either consented or the parties reached a legal resolution. Kevin asked what legal resolution meant. Karen explained, a partition action filed in civil court, a matter of public record, months of process, the buyer would likely withdraw. Kevin hung up. According to Renee, he walked back into the dining room, set his phone on the table between the holiday plates, and said 3 words. The closing's dead. Mom sat down. Her hand went to her mouth. Dad stared at the table. Renee went to the kitchen and stood at the sink. The The candles Mom had lit were still burning. The plates were still set for 4. The table was still arranged for a celebration that the county recorder's office had quietly cancelled 8 years ago. I picked up the phone at 11:20 and called Mom back. One call. I chose her because she was the architect of this, and I wanted her to hear it from me directly, not filtered through Kevin's anger or Renee's anxiety. She answered on half a ring. Audrey. Her voice was wet and shaking, the cry that comes out when the script fails and there's no understudy. I could hear the room behind her. Kevin's voice low in the background. Renee sniffling. What have you done? I had prepared for this the way I prepare for a structural inspection. Facts first, short sentences, no editorializing. I haven't done anything, Mom. Karen Hendricks ran a title search. That's standard. She found my name on the deed, which has been recorded for 8 years. She paused the closing, which is what title companies do when there's a co-ownership issue. You are ruining this family. Kevin, from somewhere in the room. She hasn't even been here in 3 years. You told me the wrong date, I said. 3 years in a row. You planned a sale around my absence. You sent me a deed of sale disguised as estate paperwork and expected me to sign it without reading it. I let that sit. We were going to split the money, Mom said. Softer now. The pivot to conciliation. We would have told you, Audrey. You would have gotten your share. Before or after the closing? I asked. She didn't answer. You told me the wrong date like last year. That's a direct quote from message 14 in the group chat. The deed has the right date. It has my name on it. That's what Vera decided, and it's been filed with the county for 8 years. Dad's voice, barely above a murmur, from somewhere in the background. We shouldn't have handled it this way. Nobody responded to him. He didn't say anything else. 7 words. Too late. Aimed at no one. They fell like a handful of gravel into a dry well. I gave them Patricia's contact information and told them any further conversation about the property should go through her. Then I wished them a Merry Christmas. I meant it. I hung up, sat at my desk in my quiet apartment, and looked at the brass key on the desk and the folder beside it and the coffee going cold in my mug. The mediation happened in February. Patricia's office, neutral space, a conference table with water glasses and a box of tissues that Mom used twice. The 4 of us in a room, me across from Kevin and Mom, Renee on neither side, seated at the end of the table where the drafter from the kitchen door used to hit her neck. Dad didn't come. He said he had a work thing. I think he was relieved to have an excuse. Patricia laid out the numbers cleanly. The property's appraised value, my 50% interest as tenant in common, the options available, a joint sale with proceeds split as the deed specified, or a buyout of Mom's interest at fair market value. Kevin said I was being vindictive. Mom cried the real cry, the one that comes when the story you've been telling for 3 years runs out of road. Renee said nothing. I said the only thing I'd come to say. Vera put my name on this property because she wanted me to have a place that was mine. I didn't ask for it. I didn't know about it until 3 weeks ago. But it's what she chose to do, in writing, with the county's stamp on it. I'm not contesting her choice. I'm just asking you to stop contesting mine. Kevin started to say something. Patricia held up one hand. We agreed to a joint sale. The house went back on the market in March with a new listing agent. It sold in April for $262,000. My share, after closing costs, was just over $123,000. I set it aside for a while. I didn't know yet what to do with it. Before the new buyers moved in, I drove to Millfield one last time. I parked on Elm Street and sat in my car for a minute looking at the house. The new wreath was still on the door, the buyers, now. The porch looked the same as it always had. The maple in the backyard was just starting to bud. I got out and walked up the front steps and put the brass key into the lock. It still fit. The door opened into a house that smelled like fresh paint and old wood. Empty now, cleared of the catalog furniture and the staged living room and every trace of the life that had been lived there. I walked through the kitchen and looked out the window above the sink at the backyard maple. Same angle Vera saw every morning for 32 years. Same light, different hands in the dish rack. I stood there for a while. Then I said thank you, out loud, to no one and everyone. I pulled the door shut behind me and walked back down the porch steps. At the bottom, I stopped, reached into my pocket, took the brass key off my ring, the heavy, old-cut, tarnished key she'd pressed into my palm at Thanksgiving 11 years ago, and I set it on the porch railing. The only thing of Vera's that stayed with the house. Here is what I want to tell you about the 3 years. They gave me the wrong date, because they needed me out of the way. That's all it was. Not hatred, mismanagement. They needed a variable to stay controlled, and I had been cooperative enough for long enough that they assumed I always would be. What they didn't account for was a woman sitting at a kitchen table turning 75 years old, deciding that a key wasn't enough, deciding to go one step further, deciding to file a document in a county office where the truth doesn't care whether you were invited to Christmas or not. Vera understood something that the rest of them had spent decades forgetting. Some things you write down. The month after the sale closed, I used part of my share to fund something I'd been thinking about since Renee's phone call. Since she said we didn't think you'd care about the old place, I set up a small legal aid fund through Patricia's referral network for tenants and heirs who have property rights they don't know about. People whose names are on deeds in county databases that nobody ever told them to check. People whose families have been assuming the management would go undiscovered. We call it the Vera Fund. No plaque, no website, just a bank account that pays for title searches and legal consultations for people who need to know what's been filed in their name. I still carry the key ring, one slot lighter now. Every now and then I notice the gap where the brass key used to hang, and I think about the difference between a gift and a document. A gift depends on the people giving it. A document depends on the law. Vera trusted the law more than she trusted the people. And she was right. Some things you write down. That's Audrey's story. 3 years of wrong dates, one deed, and a truth nobody could sign away. If you've ever been underestimated, leave I checked the records in the comments below. And subscribe to Sweet Payback Stories for more unforgettable stories of karma, justice, and the people who finally get what they deserve.